construction industry, so that helps.
Oh,
But
man.
I've been chasing leaks for 3 days, literally.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
And I heard some, plumber in Texas saying there aren't enough plumbers in the country who could.
No, there's no parts either. So everybody's scrounging.
Right.
So it's not desperate. I wouldn't say it's desperate. I mean, it was 70 degrees today. It was hot.
Yeah.
So you can imagine going from that cold to now. It was
right.
Anyways, just crazy. That's Texas, I guess.
Yeah, that is. And Chris, I don't know if you could hear us, but I think if you're Christine Jensen, thank you for joining us tonight.
Yes.
I hope you can. How are you?
Yeah, I unmuted it, but I can't. I don't see my picture on there. I don't know if I'm supposed to or not. Just make sure you can see me. I don't know.
No, I can't. We can't see you.
Oh.
So let's see. By the way, we are live on Facebook and on YouTube right now, and we'll be going live in just a few seconds here on the Zoom side and letting people in. Chris, I do see that your camera is on, so I'm guessing that the camera itself is covered somehow on your iPad or on your phone or on
Well,
your
actually,
computer.
I'm on my big desktop computer, and there's nothing on it.
It may be that the webcam with it isn't hooked up, or there isn't a webcam.
Yeah, but Elle, it says, I see the camera. The camera is here. There is a camera plugged in.
Yeah, my husband tried to turn everything on to make sure everything, he said everything where it said everything was on the camera. So I'm sorry. We've never done this before, so I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
No worries.
No worries at all. I just,
in a couple minutes.
Let's,
Hi, Christine.
Hi, Steve.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good. You look great.
Thank you. I would say you do too, but I don't see you yet.
Yeah. And I purdied up for nothing.
Well, you sound good.
Let's take off
Thanks.
here, Ellie. What do you say?
Okay.
Randy, there you are. Leon Mickens. Hello, Leon. We've been waiting for you. It's good to see you. Good to see you, Henry. Larry Googans, Rick Altman, another Desert Storm veteran. Roberta, Robbie, good to see you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us to our VBC Happy Hour, brought to you by the Veterans Breakfast Club. I am Todd De Pastino. I'm the Executive Director of the Veterans Breakfast Club, and we're a nonprofit that holds events like this to get veterans together, military families, the veterans community together to share stories with the public. And that is our mission. There are people here with us tonight who are not veterans, and that is key. I'm not a veteran. My daughter over here, Ellie, at least she's here. Hi, Ellie.
Hello.
She's not a veteran. And we think it's really important for non-veterans. One of our guests, Randy, is not a veteran. And, we think it's really important for non-veterans to hear these stories. So that's why we do them. I'm based in Pittsburgh. We've been doing these events face-to-face since 2008. And of course, last year we had to move everything virtual. And it turns out, and I did some research on this, there are internets in places other than Pittsburgh. For example, Baltimore has an internet, right? That's why we get Mary. Who else? Randy, he has an internet in Washington, D.C., so he's able to join us. So the point is, it's wonderful to bring people together. And I really was struck and very moved. I'll just say this, I'll get this out of the way. I was very moved today reading an email from Mary Klepper, who wrote an email, who just moved. And oh boy, I'm going to give it away, but she's sending something to Julia Parsons because
I think she got it today.
Oh, she did. Oh, good.
Ask her.
So Julia's here. Hello, Julia. How are you? You're going to have to unmute yourself. We always like to spotlight Julia. She's turning 100 years old a week from tomorrow.
Wow.
She's a Navy wave who did really important and interesting work in World War II, decrypting Enigma. And we're having a celebration of her 100th birthday next Tuesday. And it just struck me when I got the email from Mary. I've never met Mary. Mary's never met Julia. Julia doesn't know Mary. And yet we do feel like we know each other because we've been meeting here in these Zoom events for, several months now. And it's just a wonderful thing to have this community come together. Hi, Julia.
Hi, how's everything?
We're all doing well. And
Good.
I've been spending a lot of time talking about you because we have big plans for a week from Tuesday. So
Well, I want to know, is Mary the one who sent me the wave picture,
Yes,
the poster? Very nice. Thank
Yes.
you. I was so surprised.
so good.
But your name wasn't on it.
Sorry, I just took a bite. Amazon wouldn't do a gift purchase for some reason on your order, because it would have said from Mary, but it didn't do anything. And I thought I had time to warn you because it said it wasn't coming until at least the 25th. And here it is 3 days early. So,
Oh, it's
So-
fine. It's
well,
lovely.
hallelujah.
oh, good.
Very, very nice.
We also have
Can I
here-
hold it up? Hold it up.
Oh yeah,
here?
let's see it.
Is
Beautiful.
it coming through all right?
Yep.
Oh,
Really
yeah.
is nice. Yeah.
How nice, Mary. That's
I'm
wonderful.
very impressed.
and,
very
I
and
was
so
looking for a
Thank you.
plushie of like a Navy girl.
Oh, thank you so much. That's perfect.
You're
Just
welcome.
perfect.
and the other wonderful thing that I just have always, I think, touched by is that we have Julia, who's turning 100 next week, and we also have Henry Shepke from Madison, Wisconsin, who's 13 years old and who joins us almost every program. Henry, you've got homework to do. You can't be hanging out with all these old people all night, right? Henry? Maybe he doesn't hear me. I know that Henry can be with us for a while, and he has to go to write some World War II veterans and do some homework. So and we also have Ellie De Pastino, my daughter. She's in Chicago. How you doing, Ellie?
I'm doing well. I'm finally warm here in Chicago because I have this wonderful sweater that Ida May gave to me.
That
So,
is a wonderful sweater.
isn't it? I
Beautiful.
really love it. And it's red, white, and blue. So there you go.
And it's red, white, and blue. Thank you, Ida May, for, I guess it's my responsibility, apparently, as her parent to clothe her. But as long as you're going to do it, then I guess I don't have to do that, right?
I think he does a much better job.
Does do a much
Thank
better
you.
job.
Thank you.
Tonight we're continuing our remembrance of Desert Storm 30-year anniversary. And as we've said before, Desert Storm is a war that is really, it's not an exaggeration to say it's forgotten. I was just talking to Greg Yost today, who should be with us tonight. And, he works with middle school and high school kids who have no idea what Desert Storm was. They have no idea what the first Gulf War was. They get it confused with the second Gulf War. And it's a war that was so short in duration. It was so decisive without, attending drama like Vietnam had and protests or anything like Vietnam had. So it's overshadowed on the one side by Vietnam and kind of on the other side with the wars that we've had since September 11th, 2001. So we've been spending all month really kind of remembering and talking to veterans of Operation Desert Storm. And this is the week that 30 years ago, the ground war started. The 100-hour ground war started on February 24th, 30 years ago on Wednesday. And it's also the week that the worst incident, the deadliest incident of the war occurred. And that was the Scud attack, the Iraqi Scud attack. Many of you will remember this, especially those of you who live in Western Pennsylvania will remember the Scud attack on February 25th that hit the makeshift barracks. It was a 2-story warehouse in Tehran, Saudi Arabia. It ended up killing 28 American servicemen and women, most of them reservists. I think all of them reservists, actually, and with the quartermasters. And we have with us tonight, we have some veterans of that war, Gold Star Mother also, and we have Randy Schumacher, who is an architect, who is the man who really was the kind of the creative point for the National Desert Storm War Memorial, which is being developed for the National Mall in Washington, D.C. And I want to thank C and Randy for joining us. I think, Randy, are you in the Washington, D.C. area?
No, I actually live in Indiana.
Ah, okay. So they have the
Carmel,
internet in Indiana
Indiana.
too.
Pardon me?
They have the internet in Indiana, I guess.
We do.
Good. When did you get it?
Right here at my house.
And we also, actually, this is not funny. C. Freeman is with us, and C is joining us from Houston, where he has endured a really hard week, as has so many millions of people in Texas. Thank you, C, for I mean, we were just talking before we went live here on the Zoom side that, you know, you were without power for days, and you had other families, I guess, in your neighborhood living in your house because you had a generator.
That's correct.
Oh boy. So see, with what's been going on in your life, I'm very grateful that you're joining us tonight to talk about not only your service in Desert Storm, but also your work in getting the National Desert Storm War Memorial developed.
Well, thank you for having me. I really feel privileged to be here. Thank you.
And then we have Christine Jensen, Gold Star mother, whose son, Brian Simpson, was killed on February 25th, 1991. He was a member of the 475th Quartermaster Group, and he was at that warehouse that was hit by an Iraqi Scud. Again, many people who were in the Pittsburgh area at that time will remember this because a large number were from the 14th Quartermaster Detachment here nearby in Greensburg. Chris, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
And thank you for getting your camera working.
Finally figured it out. Thanks.
Yeah, and you did get prettied up for something.
Thank you.
After all, good.
It's teaching
Wonderful
old
to
dog
have
new
you.
tricks.
And Chris has also been very active in getting the National Memorial. I look forward to talking to all of you, and I'm very grateful that you're joining us tonight. I see that Henry has his hand up. Henry.
Well, I just wanted to say that when you were talking about me, my screen just froze, so it kicked me out of the Zoom.
Yeah, I could hear you're kind of digitizing in and out here. Now I know that you're going to have to leave early because you do have World War II veterans to write notes to.
Yeah.
And you have some homework to do.
Yeah.
If you have any problems with your homework, you should come back to this room and put the questions in the chat, because we have really smart people on this Zoom call. You name it, they can. If it's math, if it's history, my wife's an English teacher, I could grab her. So yeah. All right, Henry.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Just a few before we get started on the program, I do want to just make a few announcements because this is a big week for the Veterans Breakfast Club. We have a lot going on, but I do want to say that we put out a magazine, BBC Magazine, 4 times a year. I like to say that we flatter ourselves in calling it a magazine, but it's getting there. It's a thin little thing, but it has great veteran stories and other information. We would love to put one in the mail to you. Just let us know your address. If you don't get this in the mail, it's because we don't have your address. If you're on the Zoom side, you can put your address in the chat to me or to Ellie, or you could email me separately at todd, at veteransbreakfastclub.org, and I'll put one right in the mail to you. And so please do. It's a neat little thing. We have some great stories here. Also, the big week began already today when we released another episode of the Scuttlebutt. That is our video cast and our podcast. It's a pre-recorded thing. Sean Hall, who should be joining us this evening at some point, our program director, he is the host of the Scuttlebutt. And the whole purpose of this podcast or the video cast is to have a conversation between non-veterans like me, who have a lot of questions about military service, and veterans who could answer them. So today we had a fighter pilot, Major Mitch Fossum, who wrote a really interesting op-ed for military.com about the civilian military divide. And he and Ryan All, who many of you know, Army captain, talked about the problem of the military civilian divide in American culture. And then they also talked a bit about the Space Force, because it turns out Major Fossum's father is an astronaut. Pretty cool. So he talked about that. That was neat. Tomorrow night, if you are available, 7 p.m. Eastern, we have a really special guest. This is the man, Bud Anderson, that Chuck Yeager called the best fighter pilot he ever saw. I think that's pretty good praise. Just a pretty good endorsement if you're a fighter pilot. He's 99, just turned 99 last month. He lives in California, and he's going to be joining us tomorrow night to talk about his experiences as a P-51 Mustang pilot in World War II. He got his wings when he was 20 years old. He came home from the war all of 23 or 24 years old, and he was a major already, if you can imagine. He would go on to have a long career in the Air Force. He was a test pilot with Chuck Yeager. He flew in Chuck Yeager's squadron in World War II. And then he also flew missions in Vietnam in 1970 as a 48-year-old wing commander. So Bud Anderson will be joining us tomorrow night at 7. Do you have anything, Glenn Flickinger? You're with us, aren't you? Here?
I am. And I hope you notice my background, Todd.
Oh, yes. I don't want to go too deeply into it because I know you're going to cover this tomorrow, but what was special about the P-51 Mustang?
It's really the fighter that won the war, but it was long delayed in coming about. It was actually developed for the British in 1940 and sat kind of in the background until 1942 and 1943. And that's part of the story and the context that we're going to present when we start tomorrow, and then we'll get into Bud's story as well.
And I mean, Glenn, we'll talk about this tomorrow, and we don't have to go into it tonight, but I always thought of P-51s and all fighters really as escorts for the bombers, for strategic bombing against Germany. And it kind of surprises me to see Bud referred to as an ace, a World War II ace with, 16 and a quarter kills. Because I don't think of World War II as a kind of war that had these, dogfights, but they did. And he was one of the early ones, apparently, to peel off and kind of get into dogfights.
Well, without getting into the weeds tonight, I mean, there was a key change by one General Doolittle, as in the famous General Doolittle from the Tokyo raids, when he took over the 8th Air Force in early 1944, that he freed the fighters to go and fight, have these dog fights, as they called them, with the German fighters. And it changed the whole dynamics of the war and how the fighters were employed. This picture behind me, by the way, is special because that is actually Bud Anderson flying a rebuilt P-51 named after his old one, the Old Crow, when he was 90 some years old.
Oh my.
He's a pretty special man.
The other treat that I watched today, and we'll be talking about Bud Anderson tomorrow, but the other treat that I watched was a video film that was taken on his P-51 when he was in a dogfight. He had a camera on his plane.
Right.
And has just wonderful video capturing him, shooting down a German plane. So so please do join us if you're available tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Same Zoom address as tonight. Wednesday morning, we're back. We have 6 events in 6 days. So, because we have a private event with FedEx Ground tomorrow, FedEx Ground employees tomorrow morning, private event. None of you is invited except me. I get to meet FedEx Ground employees who are veterans, share their stories with each other and with me. Wednesday morning, we have our coffee hour. Please do join us. This is like open conversation. I usually ask a lot of questions of our veterans then. And we have an interesting conversation. For example, last week, Clem Blazewick, Army veteran, asked the Navy vets, did you ever learn how to swim? Do you have to learn how to swim in the Navy? That was the question. What do you think the answer was?
You do.
No, you don't.
Exactly. That's exactly. It depends on who you ask. Julia Parsons.
Swimming and floating are two different things.
We had a guy in our company in officer school who could not swim, and he sank to the bottom, and somebody had to pull him out.
Yes, that's true.
So we have a lot of fun. And then we're back on Thursday night with Generation 9/11. We'll have Jessica King, a Marine veteran who served in Iraq. She's also the district commander here in Western Pennsylvania for the VFW district. And she is, she's very creative in how she's reimagining and recreating the VFW for the younger generation. She'll be joining us. And then finally on Saturday night, and please take note of this, we are going to have a free screening of a new documentary called The 6888, which is a documentary about the only Black female unit to ship overseas in World War II. These are Black women who are postal workers, and they arrived in England in 1942 or 1943, and they faced a mountain of mail that needed to be delivered, some of them with only a name, not even an address on it, and they got it done. And it's a wonderful story. A new documentary has been made about them. We are going to screen the documentary here on Zoom and have the filmmaker come to do Q&A and answer questions afterwards. So that is Saturday, February 27th. Please do join us if you can. We'd love to have you. All right. So we got that. It's February 22nd. Before we get to Desert Storm and Randy Schumacher, I want to begin with, I do want to take note that today is the 55th anniversary of Don Nemchek's cousin's death. 55 years ago today, your cousin Don, Michael Nemchek, was killed in Vietnam.
Yeah, that's right, Todd. Thank you for acknowledging that. And I'll just share with the audience briefly a little bit of background. Michael joined the Army right out of high school, June 1965. He went to boot camp and then went in country, went in boots on the ground in Vietnam, November 65. He was involved in a very heavy search and destroy operation known as Operation Masher. Operation Masher, which was launched in early 1966. Operation Masher was the largest search and destroy mission of the war up to that date. And it was a combined mission of the US Army, the Army of the Republic of Vietnam, and the Republic of the Korean Army. And interestingly enough, Operation Masher, the name was changed by the LBJ administration to Operation White Wing. And the reason it was changed, they wanted to be more benign. They didn't want to have this harsh title to things. And this begun I won't say the cover up of the war, but the sanitizing of what was going on in Vietnam as early as 1966. Mike was part of the 1st Cavalry Air Mobile, and that was the principal ground force for the United States. Mike was an athletic kid. Everybody liked him. He was always the peacemaker, if you will. His nickname was the priest because he was always participating in mass. And when he went overseas, he was participating with the chaplain. Mike was involved in the operation as a forward observer, and they had just got done engaging in the enemy. There was a lot of deaths on both sides. But what happened was, of course, they were gathering intel and everything else. Mike happened to have a document in his blouse, in his shirt. And when he took the forward observer position, that sniper probably thought he must be an officer if he had maps and everything else. He was shot in the abdomen, and he didn't die where he fell. They medevaced him out, and he bled out in a helicopter. What's so impactful of this is the whole community of McKeesport learned of this 18-year-old young man's death. And the whole community came out to the funeral mass. And to this day, he's still remembered as part of the McKeesport 23. He was the second in McKeesport to be killed during the Vietnam War, the first being Norman Johnson, a medic who got killed in 1965. Right after Mike was killed, then it just began on and on. There was 11 boys from the boys club where everybody played ball and hung out, to a total of 23 boys from McKeesport. Some of them were killed in non-combative situations, and a book has been written, Did You Know That Boy?, about about the exploits and the lives and deaths of these young men. But Mike was so well remembered, and again to this day, who knows what would have become. He wanted to come back and be an executive at the boys club to help other young men go in the direction that he went in. And his loss was so devastating to the community and to the family, of course. We donated recently his Purple Heart, his Bronze Star, and some medals from the Republic of Vietnam to the McKeesport History Center. His cousin Gregory and other family members decided that it's time to share this with the community. We're all getting older. What are we going to do with them when we pass on and such? But his memory just lingers, as all of the McKeesport 23 did. And how we came of the McKeesport 23, a newcomer to the Zoom call today, Mr. Joe Hoffman, at his 1965 high school reunion, created a poster of 3 of the classmates that were killed in action in Vietnam. And it's just begun to say, hey, there's more boys, we know more. So Joe and others, myself, we went into the Department of Defense records and found all the home records of boys from McKeesport. And for those 2 or 3 year period, we did several things. We created a monument at the McKeesport High School courtyard for the McKeesport 23. We had ceremonies at the high school auditorium and the McKeesport Heritage Center. And these ceremonies were so well attended and so heartfelt. We had family members talking about their loved ones who were killed and died in Vietnam, but particularly with Michael's situation. Again, he was so young. He was 18 years old. He was killed 9 days before his 19th birthday. Sadly, he was killed on a day of his mother's 40th birthday. His brother reflects on when he was walking back home from school with his mom. This is 1966, remember. The telegram man came and gave her the telegram from the Department of Defense announcing that he had been killed. Up the street, he's seen his father. His father had already read the telegram, and there was tears in his eyes. You have to remember, back in McKeesport in those days, these guys were World War II veterans, steel workers, most of them, blue collar, hard edge. And to see him cry like that is a remembrance that Gregory still has 55 years later. I have the same memory. I come home from school. I was 15 years old. I was all slap happy. The McKeesport High School basketball team was going to the playoffs. We were all jazzed up about it. I come bouncing into my home. I see my mom and dad sitting at the kitchen table. I sensed something was wrong. Usually they were congenial, jovial. I see my dad had tears in his eyes. This day is very memorable to all of us.
And here's the telegram that Mike's mother got. The Secretary of the Army has asked me to express his deep regret that your son, Private First Class Michael J. Nimchek, died in Vietnam on 22nd February 1966 as a result of gunshot wound to the abdomen while in forward position of base compound when hit by hostile sniper fire. Oh boy.
And it was so heartfelt that, again, the community, when that funeral came and they were ringing the bell at the Holy Trinity Church, there was a tear in everybody's eye.
Oh boy. Thank you, Don.
You're welcome.
Well said, Don.
Thank you.
Hey, Todd.
Yes.
I just want Don to know I'm halfway through the book. Did you know that boy? And it's very moving. And I don't know, of course, any of you or any of your family members. And I'm very, very moved by this book. It's wonderful. I don't know if you can see it or not, but I'm halfway through it.
And isn't that the point? I mean, isn't it the point, where we think of the these towns that just, get hit disproportionately. Yeah. McKeesport in Vietnam, with, working class town, the kids there didn't have the deferments and exemptions that other kids had, in wealthier communities. And so they suffer disproportionately in war. It's so, it's McKeesport is really emblematic, Mary, of like neighborhoods in Baltimore where that happened, Philadelphia, really around the country. So thank you very much, Don. And thank you, Joe, for joining us here.
Todd.
Yes.
I'd like to ask Don a question. Does he remember Walt Yeager from McKeesport?
Yeah, I do very well. Walt was very instrumental in bringing the Vietnam Wall, the traveling wall, to McKeesport.
Exactly.
He was very instrumental in creating the remembrance, the homage that we pay to them. And he was an executive on the executive board of the Boys Club. Every ceremony on Memorial Day and Veterans Day, he was one of the first ones up to put the flag up, put the posters in, and Walt's well remembered. Exactly. We certainly do. May he rest in peace.
Thank you. Thank you.
You will be relieved to hear that I'm going to skip the little history lesson I was going to give for Desert Storm. I wanted to remind people a little bit of the history. I'm a historian, so that's my approach usually to providing context. And the reason I'm skipping it is because we have Randy here. Randy Schumacher, who's an architect, and after a conversation with him, I learned he's an extremely knowledgeable about the history of Desert Shield and Desert Storm. And I know he wants to provide some of this background in what informed his thoughts as he was developing his design for the memorial. So I thought I would start with Randy and then move on, have C and Chris chime in when they wish. And certainly we want to have Chris share more about her son. Randy, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Todd?
Very good. You sent me a wonderful PowerPoint, a PDF that I thought I would share with people. Do you just want to jump right in?
Sure. Or if you'd like me to advance it, I could share my screen. And that way I don't have to ask you to advance the slide.
We don't trust you to share your screen,
okay.
Randy. I'm kidding. We could just do it this way. And if you get frustrated by it, just let me know and Ellie will give you permission to share your screen.
No problem. Well, first, a few words. I just want to say thank you very much for having me. It's quite an honor to be in the company of all you people who have served this country. It's quite an incredible honor as an architect to be able to serve the veteran community and the veterans of Desert Storm and the National Desert Storm and Desert Shield War Memorial Association as the architect. I've been working on this since 2012. And it's been a long road to get here, and we've got a lot of road yet still in front of us. But it's being led by a tremendous group of people, and it's quite a passion project for me and for everyone that's involved. And you all are my heroes, and the people that served in Desert Storm are my heroes. And you know, the story behind it is incredible. And the CEO of the association, Scott Stump, you know, he decided to do this memorial because he didn't want to be a footnote in history. He knows that the world and the United States of America needs to remember what happened and what we did, because it was America at its finest hour. So it's just an incredible honor to be a part of it. And I love having the opportunity to tell you all about the memorial and how we are setting out to try to honor those who served and what happened with a very unique memorial that is designed based on the history of Desert Storm. So I've got a presentation. I'll try not to blabber on too much. I'll try to share the parts of the story that I think will be of greatest interest to you. This is the board of directors, and they are all veterans. They all served in Desert Storm. They are not Washington lawyers. They are not politicians. These are everyday Americans from across the country who served in Desert Storm and Desert Shield and are moved by this this commitment, this desire, this drive to make sure that Desert Storm and Desert Shield is remembered properly in Washington, D.C. With an appropriate memorial. These people are, not, except for Scott, these people are not paid. Scott's job is a full-time job, and after serving for free for many years, I think the board forced him to take a salary, which they should have, and I'm glad they did. But all the rest of them are volunteers. They have regular day jobs, and they come from all walks of life and bring a different expertise to the table. And we've got a great team and great leadership and a solid board. I mean, you don't see board members coming and going. These people are committed, and they are providing the kind of leadership that would make you proud.
And I'll chime in to say, Randy, that I've just been around enough projects built around memorials to know that this is like, it is like running an ultra marathon. I mean, you know, this is a 10-year project. I mean, it's not something anybody gets rich off of. It's not something that, that that any one person has a lot of control over, because it is, you can imagine the bureaucracy, the levels of bureaucracy, the red tape that you have to get through to get a memorial on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. So, Randy, I think part of the admiration that people have for you and others who've been working on this is just your determination, your sheer endurance. This is a long road. You said you've been working on it since 2012. And
It's a fact. Yes, it took us 3 years to get the site. And, we got to work through the Commission of Fine Arts. And if you could zoom out just a little bit to get the whole slide on the screen. There you go. So I'll kind of go through a little of the history quickly, but as you know, Iraq invaded Kuwait, a peaceful nation. They just basically rolled their tanks into Kuwait City, took over, and they set about making Kuwait a province of Iraq, and started issuing Iraqi birth certificates to Kuwaiti citizens who were born after that date. It was a terrible thing, and you can advance the slide. The things they did that Saddam Hussein did, you could go on. Were terrible. That's a radar installation. They just destroyed, homes and stores, looted the shelves of the stores. The way they went in there and what they did to the country and to the people. And before they left, they committed the biggest act of environmental terrorism the world had ever seen, setting on fire 600 oil wells. And it was devastating what they did to this country. But following that, as you know, the United States of America led the effort to come to their aid. But in those famous words right there from President Bush, this will not stand, this aggression against Kuwait, it will not stand. And you can go on. What the United States of America and Secretary Baker and President Bush then did was they built a coalition of 35 countries to work together to confront the Iraqi military and get them out of Kuwait. And it was incredible because these countries came from all different religious backgrounds. So you had Arab countries and Christian countries, and it was an incredible cross-section of countries from around Europe and around the region that all came together to right this terrible wrong. So after the coalition was formed, Operation Desert Shield began to protect Saudi Arabia from the possible advance of Iraqi forces south from Kuwait into Saudi Arabia. So we also protected Saudi Arabia. Next slide. And what was, it was a very, it was not a foregone conclusion. Many of you know and remember this, but following Vietnam, it was a very, very painful chapter in American history. It was not, nobody knew at the time that our victory would be what it was. We didn't know if we'd be ready. After Vietnam, it was déclassé to wear your uniform in public. People did not stop you in the airport to say thank you for your service. They stopped you in the airport for other worse reasons. I'm a little uncomfortable talking about it myself because I haven't served this country in that way. I wasn't in the military, and it's really hard for me to imagine how people could treat the people that defend this country and fight for this country and the way they were treated. It makes me uncomfortable to think about it and to talk about it.
And I will chime in just to say, yes, the I guess President George H.W. Bush called it the Vietnam syndrome, and it was a sense that that the nation was still suffering from the horrible hangover of Vietnam, and the how Vietnam veterans were treated when they got home from their service is just it's a national shame and embarrassment. And you know, I think there was a sense that by 1990 that there was Americans needed to do penance for that. And your point about this not being a cakewalk, in retrospect, boy, 100-hour ground war, that's the kind of ground war you want to fight. But that was not the expectation in 1990, 1991, as the buildup was beginning. This was going to be a huge conventional war between 700,000 troops on one side and over 500,000 troops on the other, with tanks and artillery and rockets. And I mean, Iraq had the fourth largest army in the world at the time. It turns out it was kind of rotted from within, but we didn't quite know that. And so, yeah, it was a very tense time. And the people who opposed the wars, there were, you know, many Americans who opposed U.S. intervention in that region. The fear was this is going to be another Vietnam. Right.
It was. In fact, they sent 40,000 body bags to the area in preparation for the ground war. You know, we just didn't know how it was going to play out. But American preparation prevailed. I got to meet General Horner in Washington a couple of years ago, and you know, he engineered the air war, which was about 5 weeks long, and pummeled the Iraqi forces, softened them up significantly, and it was a major part of the victory. It was pivotal. It was indispensable. That part of the war strategy. And then the next slide shows Norman Schwarzkopf's famous left hook battle plan, which some of you I'm sure are familiar with. The Iraqi army, of course, expected us to come straight up out of Saudi Arabia, straight up from the south, just hitting them head on. But Schwarzkopf knew that after the air war, the pummeling of the air war, he expected that they would retreat toward Iraq. So a major amount of our fighting force, all those arrows you see on the left side of that map, went up into Iraq and then turned right towards Kuwait and cut them off.
Yes.
And that was the left hook.
The left hook.
And
so
that is represented in the memorial's design. I will show you.
So Schwarzkopf's plan, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, was to kind of feint a major attack on the right flank directly into Kuwait, with the Marines leading the way. Brad Washerbaugh was there. Brad shared a wonderful story of meeting Norman Schwarzkopf, and his essay is called "Now I Learned Firsthand Why They Called Him Storm and Norman." And Ellie or Sean, if you want to put a link to that, it's on our blog here in the Zoom side, on the Facebook side. It's a wonderful little insight into Norman Schwarzkopf. There were Marines staged on the right flank to invade Kuwait directly, and with the appearance that there was going to be many more troops to follow on that right flank. But in the meantime, the major movement was on the left flank, and as Randy said, the big left hook curling into Kuwait, hundreds of miles and around to the other border with Kuwait, and that's what helped seal such a quick victory in that 100-hour ground war.
That's right. So there's, of course, what has been called the Highway of Death, resulting as they retreated, the major offensive that was launched against them to defeat their retreating army. Another thing about Desert Storm and Desert Shield was, this war was broadcast into everyone's homes on CNN. And we learned all these new vocabulary words like smart bomb, things. So we saw every day this victory unfolding and the incredible new use of military technology to so soundly defeat the Iraqi forces. And this all built and contributed to this, what eventually would be the restoration of the reputation of the American military in the eyes of the American people. It led to this incredible victory in the streets of Kuwait City, the celebrations between the Kuwaitis and military forces from the 35 coalition countries. It was an incredible thing that we did. We all risked our lives, or I should say the American military risked their lives to rescue a country. And it was an incredible act of heroism for the United States of America to do this. You can go to the next slide, please.
Do you see this, Randy? Vietnam Syndrome Gone, front page of the Atlanta.
No, I'm still seeing the Time magazine cover.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
How you doing? Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Let me try this again. I may have been hung up here for some reason. How's this?
What happens? It's coming up now, I think. It's still black.
It's still black. Okay. Hold on. We're just experiencing some technical difficulties here. Let me try it one more time with another feature added. How's that?
There we go.
Okay.
There it is. So yes, Vietnam Syndrome Gone. That's Ambassador Skip Ganim, who is the ambassador at the American Embassy in Kuwait City, re-raising the American flag after Kuwait had just been liberated. Our team has had the great pleasure of working with Skip Ganim. I've had the pleasure of meeting him and talking with him and attending meetings with him, and he's been an advisor and a contributor to the effort to help us get the site awarded. This war was such an incredible victory that we had a victory parade on Constitution Avenue, which is very important because the memorial is on Constitution Avenue, 23rd in Constitution. It will be built there. And the fact that this parade went down Constitution Avenue helped us win that site. And it was a 3-year effort to convince the Commission of Fine Arts to award us what is probably the primo site for a memorial in all of Washington. Now this picture, of course, is not Desert Storm uniforms. This was several years after Desert Storm, but I think Desert Storm turned the corner and made this cover possible, because that was when the tide turned. Desert Storm made heroes out of the American military again. And the next slide shows you also as well, those words, "Thank you for your service." Most people don't remember those words being said before 1991. It was after 1991 that people started saying those words. And they say those words to this day as a result of the change that Desert Storm and Desert Shield brought around after Vietnam. And it's such a beautiful thing because, so the site.
Hey, Randy, you don't have to keep up with my clicking. You can continue your thought. You can finish your thought, I should say.
I will. The relationship to Vietnam is not just a calendar bookending where Vietnam is here and Desert Storm is there. They're inextricably linked in other really profound ways, because as many of you know, a lot of the people that served in Vietnam served in Desert Storm. So there's this link, almost this brotherhood. And I've heard many stories about Vietnam veterans thanking the Desert Storm veterans and the camaraderie that is I'm sure you people on this call can probably describe it much better than I can. But there's a strong kind of brotherhood or kinship between the two events. And that's why we wanted that site that we got. If you go back to the map, I'll show you the site. It's very, very close. So now the area outlined in red, nobody's allowed to build there. That's called the reserve. So for posterity, Congress passed a law saying no memorials can ever be built within this red line again. It was getting too crowded. But if you go to the next slide, on the left end there, so that circle is the Lincoln Memorial. And the red dot is the spot that is perfect for our memorial. And you can see it's just right outside that line. It's almost like they accidentally left the best piece of ground just waiting for us. And we fought for 3 years for it. We fought Scott Stump and Nee Freeman and Kent Shively and Kyle Leggs. They fought the Commission of Fine Arts for 3 years to get that site awarded. I shouldn't say fought. It was quite a process of study. We brought in scholars who wrote papers for us and who testified. You know, the connection to the Vietnam Memorial and to the State Department and to the Lincoln Memorial, which is a symbol of liberation, creates a nexus that makes that, and Constitution Avenue. So that horizontal red line, that's Constitution Avenue, where that parade was. So there's this historic nexus that makes this site the perfect location for the Desert Storm and Desert Shield Memorial.
Oh, how neat.
It also happens that the site is beautiful.
I'm sorry, Randy, I just want to invite C and Christine, if you want to chime in at any point, because I know you were part of that process. I don't want to cut Randy off, but feel free to chime in if you'd like. Sorry,
Absolutely.
Randy.
I'll
Okay.
blabber on forever if you let me. So you guys. So yeah, this slide gets it perfect. So you can see if you draw a line across the north wall of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, go one way to the right, which is it lines up with the Washington Monument. If you extend it the other way, it just happens to go right through our site, which I think is a really pretty cool alignment.
So cool.
Also, we had to push the memorial up north to stay out of the reserve, A, and B, to preserve as much of that pristine parkland as possible, because that's America's front yard. You know, people recreate there, and that's part of the function of the National Mall. You know, when senators and congressmen and congressional aides and, you know, lawyers or whoever want to play a game of softball, or tourists or veterans, you can go onto the National Mall and you can play a game of softball. That's part of the National Mall. So we were saving a lot of that site for that purpose. So we've nestled the site up towards the trees. This is the money shot. This is looking right across the site. This is the view from the memorial. You can see the Lincoln Memorial, a symbol of liberation. And off to the left side of this, a couple 100 yards, is a Vietnam Veterans Memorial. It is probably the finest piece of ground in all of Washington for this memorial.
Gives me chills. Mary, you have your hand up.
Yeah, hi, Randy. I'm Mary. I'm not a veteran either, but I'm a tour guide, licensed tour guide in DC. And I was under the impression, we've been told for years that plot of land where you're speaking of, that was going to be the museum that would talk more about the Vietnam War and then showcase a lot of the items that were left at the wall. Do you know if that has been pushed down further from the memorial, or they've canceled that altogether? Do you know?
Excellent question. If you go back to the map, very good question. It's funny. So the site that was to have been for the Vietnam Veterans Visitors Center is just to the right. Go back down one more slide, the blow up, the aerial photo.
You
Okay,
had
this
it
one.
before, Todd.
Okay.
Yeah, that one.
So just to the right of the site, there's a triangular piece of open ground there,
Okay.
right where the word Vietnam is written.
Mhm.
That's where the visitor center was going to have been.
Okay.
And originally, way back in 2012, when I started designing this, I wanted to put the Desert Storm Memorial there. So I was close. I was in the ballpark, but we ended up across the street. The Visitor Center project, I think, I believe it was terminated. I
Oh,
believe they
man.
had funding problems, and I believe that project is no longer moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So that's the site. It's a wonderful site. So when we began design back in 2012, this effort's led by veterans. It's for veterans. And we put out a survey to veterans of Desert Storm and asked them 5 questions about how should we design this memorial? Because look at me, what do I know about a memorial for Desert Storm? I knew that the veterans of Desert Storm needed to be heard. And the memorial needed to be designed for them. And it needed to be meaningful for them and their families, as well as for America. And we learned these 5 things in the survey from veterans: that the memorial should honor those who served, that Schwarzkopf's left hook should be represented in the memorial, the 35 Nation Coalition. The American veterans were telling us that the 35 Nation Coalition needed to be represented somehow. The uniqueness of the desert environment needed to be represented in the memorial. And the mop gear that you all had to wear in the desert, came up in the survey. And we struggled with that as a design team, how to represent that. So after years of working on this, we've kind of settled on one main overarching theme, which is to honor those who served. The main theme of the memorial is to honor those who served. And you can go down a lot of different avenues. There's a lot of things you can do in a memorial. There's a lot of things that we want to put in it. The pivot, you have no idea. The team has worked for all these years on hundreds of meetings and studying the site and studying the design and talking about the narrative and working with artists. And so we finally have come to a design shown here on your screen, which is somewhat shaped like a storm, but it goes much, much deeper than that. So you can see the line of the reserve. So we stayed outside of the reserve. We're nestled up into the trees, and it's shaped somewhat like a storm. But it's much deeper. If you go to the next slide, it's a very, very symbolic design that encloses a space, a sacred space, because you've got a busy street on 2 sides of you. Noise from Washington, D.C. You've got airplanes going in and out of Reagan Airport nearby. We knew we needed to create a space that we could somewhat shield from the noise to create an appropriate memorial experience. So we surrounded it with walls, curved walls. Now, out of respect for the Lincoln Memorial and out of respect for the National Mall, it is required that the memorial be low to the ground. We could not go 12 feet tall or 40 feet tall. There's no spires, no towers. It's got to be low to the ground and respect the landscape of the National Mall. And this is dictated by the Commission of Fine Arts. So we developed this dune-like idea where the two curving walls that enclose the space are symbolic of the left hook shape. So as people move into the memorial across the bottom of this image, they're literally walking in this left hook shape. And they're enclosed by these two walls that are reminiscent of the desert environment. Yet at the same time, we wanted this memorial to be comfortable. It is so hot in Washington. A lot of the memorials you go to, you know, they get so hot. They have these big open areas of paving, and it can be stiflingly hot. We've created a water feature in the middle and a canopy of trees to create a comfortable space in the middle. So it's an enjoyable place to go to. That's what this slide was talking about, the oasis. So it's an oasis in the desert, so to speak. And then every bit of the memorial's design is very carefully thought through and is being deliberated over in countless meetings with the board of directors, the Commission of Fine Arts, the National Park Service, the design team, which includes Skip Graffam with the Olin Studio in Philadelphia, one of the foremost landscape architects in the country, doing incredible work on this. But every square inch of it is being thought through about how are we going to build in the right symbolism. The main curved wall will probably be covered with bas-relief carvings that tell the story of the war. The second wall, shown there in blue, is going, right now we believe it's going to be symbolic of service and sacrifice, and it will have wreaths on it and some inscriptions that honor the sacrifice. Christine's son, and by the way, Christine, it's great to see you. It's been a while since I've seen you. It's an honor to have you here tonight.
Thank you. Good to see you too.
The other thing, I love this slide right here because it shows how different they are, but how poignant they both can be. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial on the left is a different kind of war. A different kind of memorial was called for. You descend down into the ground, you go down. It's carved like a gash into the earth. It's got 59,000 names of those lives that were lost. It is a place of mourning, as it should be. America, that memorial has helped America mourn and grapple with what happened in Vietnam. And a couple of 100 yards away, we want to build a memorial that tells a different story. A memorial about victory, a memorial about doing the right thing, a memorial where it's not a jagged cut in the earth, but you slowly curve in the left hook manner and you go uphill. You ascend, symbolically, you rise to the center. It's an entirely different experience, as it should be. Here's a 3D view of it. You can see the walls with the carvings on them. In the center, the coalition fountain, which would honor the 35 countries involved in the coalition. It would be a water feature, so as you ascend around and rise up to the center, you're left to contemplate the lasting message of the war, which was the unity of the world coming together to right this wrong. Some more images from inside the memorial, creating places for people to stay and to contemplate what happened. This slide gives you a little bit of an idea of the carvings on the wall, which are still being designed. We are not finished designing it. We do not have all the money we need to build it, far from it. The government does not give you money to build memorials. We do not get any money from the government. The U.S. government has given us this site, and that is a pretty incredible thing. But the board is raising the money to build the memorial. It's my dream that they'll have it by November 11th for Veterans Day this year. We cannot break ground until the money is raised. It's a law. We cannot turn over dirt until all the money is raised. And we've got a ways to go. We've got a good ways to go.
I thought I would, Randy, this was so fascinating to hear a perspective of somebody who knows their history, but also somebody who has this artistic vision to how to represent something that is unrepresentable, really, war. I mean, how do you capture something like that in a, architectural design? But I love hearing that inside view. What I want to do is I thought, of course, I love Chris to talk and see, but I also want to open it up, especially to the Desert Storm veterans who are with us tonight, to get their perspective on it. Chris Perolo, Leon Mickens is with us. We have Brad Washabaugh. We have, who else? I know we have somebody else here. Well, you know my point. What are your thoughts here? Oh, Patrick. Patrick, how are you?
Fine. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. I'm a Desert Storm veteran, but first of all, Christine, I wanted to thank you for your son's sacrifice. And I have a question for Christine, if I may.
Yes.
Christine, were you standing on the steps with us in 2019 when we posed for the photograph on Memorial Day when we marched in the parade, the Desert Storm veterans?
No.
Oh, okay. I couldn't remember if I recognized you from the photograph or not. So
Not from that time. No, I wasn't there for the Memorial Day.
Okay.
Chris, I will ask you, your son being killed February 25th, 1991, you've been involved with this effort to build a national memorial. I'm a king of asking stupid questions, but why is this memorial important to you?
Well, I think that everyone that participated should be remembered there. Like you said, we did a fantastic job. It was over quickly. Few casualties. One is too many, but we had so few there, and it was just so quickly. And every time I went to the No Greater Love ceremony to honor Brian and the others, I went several years. And when we would go to the Kuwait embassy and have dinner with them, sometimes I sat at the table with ambassadors, and it would give me chills that they said that they would never, ever forget what the United States and the Allies had done for them, that when they were talking about giving birth certificates to people that said they were born in Iraq after they had stormed in and took over there, that their children now were not considered Iraqis because they got that back, and that they were Kuwaitis, and that they appreciated us so much. And after the Vietnam War, things were so bad. Just to hear that and hear them, and every year they would put on this wonderful, beautiful dinner for everyone to come and visit their embassy, and just to thank us for what we had done.
Chris, could you tell us a little bit about Brian? Why did he want to join the Army? What did you think when he said, "Mom, I'm joining the Army"?
Well, I was very surprised. He graduated from high school in June, and on the 4th of July, he went downtown to do whatever. And he came home and he said, I joined the Army out of nowhere. We'd never talked about this. And I was really shocked. But he said that, and I asked him why the Army, and he said it was the only recruiter open on the 4th of July. And so they got him. And but there was one problem, was that he was only 17. And so Mom had to sign the paperwork. And I knew that if I didn't sign it, that he would be 17 in 23 days. and then he would go anyway. So I signed the paperwork when the recruiter came and talked to them and let him go. But back in 1986, there weren't a lot of jobs. Things were kind of down. We were living in Anderson, Indiana, and there just wasn't a lot for him to do there. And he had great computer skills, but he joined the Army, and that's why he went. And of course, never dreaming that we were going to be in another war.
No, yeah, so many did.
And the fact that he got out, he actually did his 4 years and he had gotten out. And he, at that time, it was when you did 4 years in service and then 4 years reserve, but you never did anything, just they could call you up. So he'd come home in the summer of 1990, and in January 91, they called him and told him he had to come back.
Yeah.
He was a helicopter refueler.
That's what he was, a helicopter refueler with the 475th Quartermaster Group.
Well, that's where they put him. When he went back, they took like, I don't know, 200, 250. And I think most of them were refuelers. They brought back and sent them over there, and then they dispersed them all out to wherever. And I believe he was the only one that went to that group. So when he was killed, it took them 5 days to notify us because they didn't know he was from Indiana. They thought he was from Pennsylvania.
They thought he was with the 14th Quartermaster Detachment. Right. I want to remind people a little bit about what these Scud attacks were about. It turns out that the 1 million man Iraqi army was really rotted from within with terrible leadership, very poor morale, not well trained. They were exhausted after an 8-year bloody war with Iran. But we didn't know that at the time. When the invasion took place, the ground invasion took place, it became clear that Iraq really didn't have that many cards to play. The one card that they felt they had to play were these so-called Scud missiles that were Soviet-built ballistic medium-range missiles that Iraq had kind of retrofitted to go a little bit farther distance, maybe 400 miles, 500 miles instead of 200 miles. But it meant that they were largely inaccurate. They couldn't really target them to any one place. They could just send them in the general direction. And they only had, 100 of them or so. They ended up shooting 88 of them during this war in January and February, half of them toward Israel, hoping that Israel would overreact to it and split the coalition by having some of the Middle Eastern Arabic countries peel off of the great coalition that was built around the United States effort here. And then half of them against Saudi Arabia, which was hosting, Americans for the war and where Americans were stationed. And so these Scud missiles were mobile. They were on trucks. They were very hard to find. The air war was actually extended and the ground war was delayed to try and find more of them because pilots were searching for them, searching the desert for these things so they could destroy them so that they wouldn't terrorize the population. When you have a weapon that cannot be aimed properly, all it does is promote terror, to terrorize civilian populations. And that's what the US was trying to prevent by knocking out these Scud missiles. On February 25th, one of these Scud missiles at around 8:40 p.m. Came whistling toward Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, where American reservists were stationed. Rick Altman was there. Rick is with us tonight. And Rick saw this attack take place. He was in Dhahran, and he remembers that Scud being fired. He remembers it, coming in, there being a thin trace of light, then an explosion. He thought at first it was a Patriot missile intercepting the Scud, but it wasn't. It was an initial explosion, and then there was a subsequent explosion, and you could see the damage that it did to the building. And that's where Brian was. Oh boy, I have a hard question for you, Chris. And I don't know if it's an appropriate question or not, but I'll take a chance. There were so few Americans who were killed in this war. Do you think it's harder? I mean, in the hundreds, right? Do you think it's harder to be a Gold Star mother in a war where so few people share your grief? You could unmute yourself if you'd like. Chris, we can't hear you.
I never really thought about it that way, I guess. because when I joined the Gold Star Mothers, the group that I joined actually were all Vietnam mothers.
Okay.
And several of them have died off now. But they were all, I mean, I was the only Desert Storm, and they were all Vietnam mothers. So I really hadn't thought about that.
So the Vietnam Gold Star mothers supported you.
Yes.
In your grief.
Mhm.
That's terrific. We have Leon Mickens, who's a Marine in Desert Storm. Hi, Leon. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Todd. I appreciate it.
We could barely hear you, but I'm just curious what you think about this memorial effort.
I'm trying to figure out how to turn up my volume.
Okay. Well, how about you work on that? And I'll mute you for now while you're working on that. And then we can come back to you because I do have some great pictures of you in Desert Storm. Rick Altman, I don't know if you care. Rick is one of these rare veterans who served in, let's see, it was first a Marine in Vietnam, and then it was the Navy. And then finally he gave the Army a shot and he ended up in Desert Storm. Rick, I don't know if you want to share your thoughts on either the memorial or the upcoming anniversary. What will you be doing? Will you be going to the memorial in Greensburg on the 25th on Thursday?
I hope to. I would like to do that. Customarily, for the last 10 or 12 years, I've been in Florida at this time of the year. But it's thought-provoking. And since I'm here sharing this lovely weather with everyone, I thought I would drive. I now live in Washington County. I'll drive over to Greensburg on that day and think about the decision of a man I only saw once, never saw him again, don't remember his name, but for him, but for the grace of God, I would have been in that building.
Yeah, and you wrote a nice piece about that memory that we sent out in an email the other day. Ellie, or Sean, if you want to add the link to it here on the Zoom side or on the Facebook side, do you care to share that story? Because you were in the Marine Corps, you served in Vietnam, you came back home, you got on with your life, but you always missed that military family. And so you thought you would join a reserve unit, and you tried to join the 14th Quartermaster Detachment.
Yes, that's correct. I had been living in Maryland and had been a member of an engineer unit in the Maryland National Guard. When I moved to Pennsylvania for job reasons, I started searching for reserve units close to where I was living. And surprisingly, the quartermaster company, because it was water purification, they had a couple of engineer slots due to I guess, working with grounds and putting up buildings and so on at these water purification points. So they had one engineer slot for which I was suited by rank and MOS. But the first sergeant said, we have a young fellow here who's been with us since his basic training, and he's headed for that slot that you're eligible for, and I would be disloyal to him if I give it to you. And I accepted that. That was a reasonable explanation, and went on about my way. I ultimately found an engineer unit that I fit into. I never gave it a thought until that night. And I thought to myself, I don't know. I don't remember that first sergeant's name. And I don't know the name of the young man who got the slot I was headed for. There, but for that young man and the loyalty of his first sergeant, I might have been in that building.
Yeah. Boy. Brad Washabaugh, you have your hand up. You were an officer in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm.
Yes, this is one, I think, Todd, this is a fantastic show. I don't think I'd ever get a chance to thank Randy for all the work he's done. As a Desert Storm veteran, as a military veteran, I think we have these memorials to honor but never forget, and I think it's magnificent. I really think it's well done, it's well thought out, and it's needed. I can remember coming home to a nation that was unified, And it's sad that we have to have a war to bring people together, to bring countries together. There are other good reasons to bring countries and people together, but war brings out the best and it brings out the worst in people. And this memorial tells me about the best, about the people that went forward. Some gave their lives, but they all served, and they stood tall and they stood firm against somebody that was evil and wreaked havoc on a country that needed to be saved. And we did it. And coming home to the yellow ribbons, coming home to the parades. I mean, can you imagine a Marine marching in the streets of Hollywood in a victory parade? That was fantastic. And flying across the country in a big 747 with ground control saying, "This is Chicago. We know who you are and what you did. Godspeed and welcome home." And coming home and cracking the hatch of that 747 and sticking that flag out and waving it, and coming home to people cheering, thanking. And we felt bad in a way for the Vietnam veterans, but we also felt proud that we could represent all the military in those victory parades. So I'm extremely moved and thankful for everybody, for the stories, for the efforts, for the hard work that's been known. I knew about this memorial coming, and just so excited. And Randy, we'll have any names on this memorial of the fallen? You mentioned countries, but no names.
Good question, Randy.
Yeah, we've grappled with that question for a long time. At one time, we thought it might, but it's been something that ultimately it was decided because our memorial needed to be different and not be a place of mourning, and be a memorial not just to the 383 who lost their lives, but a memorial for everyone who served. Those are some of the main reasons it was decided that they would not put the names on it. There are other more mundane reasons. For example, and this is not the most compelling reason, but honestly, it's really very, very difficult to do it, because to put an actual number to it, because where do you draw the line? You know, if you draw the line on the day the ceasefire, but what about the people that lost their life the next week? And what about the names you miss? You know, there'll be forever families coming forward saying, well, my loved one had PTSD, or, you know, as a result of complications, they died a year later. They should be on. There is a lot of reasons why the National Park Service and the Commission of Fine Arts didn't want names on it. But I think in the end, the board of directors grappled with it. And like I said, it's led by veterans. It wasn't a decision made by the designers or any one person. It was a decision. We even consulted Christine about it. And in the end, it was decided that this memorial would not have the names of the fallen on it.
Nee Freeman, you've been quiet this whole time. What are you thinking? What are your thoughts on what we've been discussing?
Well, first of all, I want to tell Miss Jensen, thank you for being here, and good seeing you. And I can tell you, this little lady here was very instrumental in helping us get that site. Her testimony was so moving, and I don't think there was a dry eye at the Commission of Fine Arts hearing that she testified at. It was moving, and it just solidified why we're doing this. It's for, yes, ma'am. And so I'm a Desert Shield, Desert Storm veteran. Back then, I just joined the service to serve my country, but I wanted to be a paratrooper in the 82nd and get my college fund. And that was pretty much it. And after my first field exercise, I was pulled out of that exercise and sent over in Saudi Arabia as a young private, and never saw any of this coming about, and we just were all doing our duty. We're just doing our job, and to come back as heroes was amazing. We had sergeant majors who sat in the airport and cried, that served in Vietnam, that came back to a totally different situation. You're like, what's up? Sergeant majors, he said he couldn't believe how we were treated and respected compared to how he was treated years before. And, Randy hit upon it. The majority of our senior leaders are Vietnam veterans. And, thank God they said it's not going to happen on their watch again. And after Vietnam, they started turning the service around and started training for this. And when this happened, we were ready. The technology was there. We did our job. So, this is an honor to serve on the board. It's I've been with the board since 2015. That's my platoon right there. That's the January 17th when we got word that we were moving out for Desert Storm. So that was that's a great group of guys who we just have a common bond that to this day lasts. We're texting right now while we're on this call. So the camaraderie is what was drawn to me to serve again. And I'm just truly amazed at our team. I mean, Randy has been here longer than anybody. And we wouldn't be where we're at without Randy. I remember in the first meeting that we had for the site selection, we were going to go look at all the sites. And Randy had a little pointer and he pointed right to our site. And that's just a magical moment to me, is that he is the one who said this site right here. And we went out and toured them. And when that was the last site we went to, and when we all got there, it was like the aha moment. Everybody turned around. And I remember Colonel Legg said, "This is it, fellas. This is it." And so from that point on, we went after the site. And it's just been a labor of love with everybody. Just like Randy said, it's been tough, but it's been a journey that I pinch myself that I'm actually involved in it. It's just a private, I was a radio teletype operator in the desert. So to be here now, but I'm really honored to be here amongst all the soldiers and all the Desert Storm soldiers and Vietnam soldiers and the civilians. So it's a big effort, so that's how I feel right now.
So you just reminded me, I guess you could say Desert Storm was the last teletype war.
Yes. Yes, I actually had a teletype. I sat in front of a teletype in a Humvee and did messages. We didn't have emails. We didn't have the internet to us. We had a fax machine that was probably the size of a, I don't know.
Volkswagen.
It was a two-man lift. I can tell you that for the fax machine back then. So, we wrote letters to our loved ones. We didn't talk to them. We wrote letters. So it's kind of strange to know that was only 30 years ago.
Yes,
it was.
Yeah, exactly. That's how old you are. See,
yes,
Christine, and then I want to go to Larry, but Chris, Larry Googans has just alerted me. He thinks that you have visited us here in Western Pennsylvania for a Tet party in February one year in Aliquippa.
No.
Okay.
Different one.
In fact, I have tried to reach someone there several times and never got a call back about coming there. I've been there, but not for any of the ceremonies. I've been there to see the monument.
Larry, we've got to get Chris here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I thought a fellow named Bill Russo may have brought you to one of the Tet parties in Hopewell.
No.
Okay. Well, we will now.
Great.
Yes. Larry Gamrett, what were you going to say?
I'm just going to say, Todd, that I did have one opportunity to speak to my mom in Vietnam, all right? And that was using a radio telephone operation in an FTC, no, well, I call it FTC or whatever it is, all right? Using the signal battalion equipment. And what they did is they asked you for your phone number, who you're going to call, then they would radio what I'm saying over to the United States, state of Pennsylvania. And then they tell Bell Telephone or whoever, say, it's your son calling you from Vietnam. And he only has 5 minutes to say, hi, Mom, how you doing? Goodbye, Mom. That's what I did.
Yes, we've had
when
some
I hear all these stories about computers and all this, man, it puts me out, man. It really does.
Absolutely, Larry. Yeah, we've had some great stories from Ed Blank and from Clem Blazewick about the how much effort it took to get a phone call from Vietnam back home. I know that we're reaching 8:30, which is the end of our program. So don't feel like you're being rude if you step off. I want to go a little bit long, just because we have a few other people I want to ask questions of. Robbie, Roberta, Shioli, you've been sitting, and Bill Prizzuti, your cousin? Is he your cousin? Is Tony your cousin?
Yes, he is.
Oh, okay. You have my sympathies.
He's a wonderful man.
Thank you. I know that you've been sitting waiting patiently. You're a Blue Star mother, and not of Desert Storm. This is your son, Luke Shioli, who looks extremely impressive here as a Green Beret combat medic. You came on our program last time. I did have some photos of him that I didn't share, but I thought I'd share these. You talked a bit about Luke and Larry Guggens. He's your neighbor. Luke was your neighbor growing up, or when he was growing up. And we heard a little bit about his story. I just thought I'd share some of these pictures of him. He was badly wounded. This is what he's doing now. Is he still in New York City right now?
He is. He went back about a month ago to work with the second surge of COVID patients coming through.
Okay. And he was badly wounded in Iraq? Afghanistan.
January 18th, 2018.
And I bet you and Christine could relate a lot to each other, and the kind of trepidation that you had having a son in a war zone, and
Absolutely. And nothing really prepares you for for a call indicating that there's been, a serious injury kind of thing. I'm a nurse by background as well. And, nothing really does prepare you for that as a parent.
And it looks like he had to kind of learn how to walk again, or practice his walking.
He did. He had, his injuries were substantial, where the cervical vertebrae in his neck were compromised because of a building falling on him. And his left hip was fractured from the femur sort of hitting into that bone of the pelvis. So he couldn't really bear weight for 3 months from the pelvis injury, but more substantial and more concerning at the time were his neck injuries. And, he owes his walking and his ability to move all arms and legs to the efforts in Germany, where he was taken after the injury.
This is a sobering picture for me. This is him at the beach, and you could see the scar running up the back of his neck.
I will tell you, you are showing me pictures that I've not seen.
Oh gosh, you're kidding me.
I've seen some of them, but there are some that I don't, I had not seen. And Luke was please. I mean, he was a very private individual when it came to me. I think maybe wanting to protect me.
Yeah. Of course he would.
Yes. But I mean, he's come so far. He has, it's a lifetime journey, but he has really come so far and is doing remarkably well.
Robbie, it's a lifetime journey, but think about, so he's still recovering, and what is he doing? He's out helping other people.
He is. It's amazing to me where he gets that strength to do that and that commitment to do that. We were, a friend of mine who knows all my family for a very long time. I worked with her, and she's sort of the queen of pre-hospital care in the Pittsburgh area. She sent a post to me from Facebook where somebody in New York posted comments about his service there and what an inspiration his efforts are to them. You know, to sort of not feel sorry for yourself, but to, you know, think of a way to give back, no matter how that is, you know, no matter what type of work that is. And it was remarkable to me that, you know, that's my child. And secondly, that, you know, it's pretty amazing that he continues to give. He's given so much already.
You know what, Robbie, he must have had a good mother.
You're very
Amen to
kind.
that.
So. Larry may disagree. I don't know. Larry might disagree.
No, I do not. You know, I don't disagree. Todd, this young man has been giving to help people as long as I've known him. And I've known him, oh, I don't know, since he was a small boy. Todd, I'll tell you, I tried the other way. I won't do it now. It's getting late. Of what he has done since he was a young man. He is always been out helping people. And that's what he's doing now. I told you already, he is my hero and always will be. Thanks, Todd.
Wonderful. Robbie and Bill, would you like to say anything? I know that I wanted Bill to talk eventually about Bill Pursuti about his 101st Airborne experiences, but do you have anything to say about Luke?
Well, Luke, as Larry said, is a fine young man, and we give him a lot of credit for what he's gone through. He's a very personal guy. Doesn't like to talk a lot about, you know, his experiences. But Todd, just a moment, if I may, with my cousin Roberta, which you refer to as Robbie. We come from a military family. I believe during the Second World War, we may have had 8 uncles at one time serving during the Second World War. My background, as you mentioned, is with the 101st Airborne. But we had an uncle that served in the 2nd Rangers, if you remember the movie, you know, recently that was made. So we have a long line of experience with the military. But to all of you that have served, and Chris, you losing a member of your family, and Robbie, what you've gone through with Luke, good luck. And thanks for the time, Todd.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for coming. Does anybody have any questions for Chris or C or Randy or any of our Desert Storm veterans? Chris Perlow.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Chris Perlow, U.S. Navy Reserve retired. Randy, congratulations on the project. It's, I guess, overdue to have definitely overdue to have such a memorial. But I noticed in the design, and maybe it's a restriction, but I did not notice a flagpole or any flagpoles associated with the memorial. Did I miss that, or is that part of the design?
No, that's an excellent question. We, again, it's, we are looking at ways to incorporate maybe the flag, maybe in the carvings, but it, due to the height restriction and also just if you have a flag, then the National Park Service would need to maintain it, put it up and take it down in bad weather and all of that. So I think the flags, we've looked at maybe putting around the fountain, maybe a flag of each country, maybe in the bronze work or in the stone work somehow, so it's not an actual flag. Yeah, it's funny how some decisions about the design of the memorial are driven by just some of the realities of maintaining it. Because the Park Service will become the owner of the memorial. And before we break ground, I said we need to have 100% of the money. Well, we actually need to have 110%, because 10% has to be maintained for maintaining the memorial in the future. And the Park Service, You know, they're spread across all of Washington, D.C. and all the other parks in the country. And there are just certain realistic limitations to what they can maintain. So what we can design has certain limitations on it too. Like we can't pick any plant material we want to use. You know, there's trees and there's grass and there's stone and there's bronze, and getting a water feature isn't the easiest thing in the world to do either, but we really want it. So we're pushing for the water feature. And but yeah, the flag is something we've talked about in some iterations of the design. At times we've contemplated a flag. When we were one of the other sites we were looking at, which wasn't on the National Mall, you could go as tall as you wanted. And we could have put flags there to the extent that they could maintain them. But being on the mall, being so close to everything, they just wouldn't allow anything that was tall.
Randy, this is a good opportunity for you to let people know if they want to support the project by donating, where would they go?
Please, yes. The National Desert Storm and Desert Shield Memorial website, which is, I think it's ndsm.org, National Desert Storm. Is it Desert Shield? See?
Yeah, NDSWM. Yes.
ndswn.org. Please do donate. It really helps. There is a strong need for it. There is, you know, I'm going to be honest with you. Corporate America really, we've had a few corporate sponsors who have helped. Pilot Truck Stops has helped, and there's been a few. I can't name them. I'm not, you know, on the board, but you know, you'd think a great cause like this would not have any shortage of funds, but you know, through the hard work of a lot of board members and the gift shop and literally bake sales and selling hats and t-shirts on the website. And, you know, Jill Etter is a board member, and her daughter have worked tirelessly to keep enough funds rolling in to keep things operational. But, you know, it's not like some of the big corporations that sold arms, you know, the people that make Humvees and weapon systems and things like that haven't really stepped up yet to help us. So there is a strong need for funds to keep us moving forward with this effort.
I did put the link here on the Zoom side in the chat. I also put my email. So if you're looking, you know, if you don't get the, if you can't get connected to the Memorial Foundation, you could email me. I'll connect you. I'll make sure that you get the link that you need. And also, I just want to invite people who don't get our emails, who don't get our mailing. Patrick, I know, was here for the first time, Desert Storm. Please do email me. Let me know who you are, and I will make sure that you get on our email list. And what are you showing me there, Patrick?
I just, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but I'd just like everybody to remember the 26 soldiers and one civilian contractor that we lost in the 1st Infantry Division during Desert Storm.
Excellent. Thank you very much,
By the
Patrick.
way, somebody did ask the question if Kuwait had donated. Excellent question. Yes, they have, or at least I guess I should say the nation of Kuwait has pledged $10 million for the memorial. We think, you know, the final cost we think will probably be somewhere around 35 million. Since the design isn't done yet, it's impossible to say exactly what it's going to cost. We also don't know how long it will take us to get it built, but we think with maybe 30, somewhere between 30 and 40. I mean, that's where we are. Kuwait has promised $10 million. However, they are not releasing any of those funds for the design effort. So we haven't the board hasn't, and C, please correct me if I don't say this right, but we haven't received any actual funds from Kuwait yet. So the board is working very hard to keep, enough donations coming in to keep the design effort moving forward.
Yeah, the wonderful point, Robbie. Tom Hanks spoke in support of the World War II memorial. We need a celebrity speaking in support of this memorial, I think.
We do.
We do. If
yes.
anybody knows one,
You know somebody.
we'll be open.
Yeah. Let's see. Somebody here should become famous.
I'm
Leo
not
West
famous.
will make you famous. This is great. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you will join us again. Randy, you'd always be welcome. Christine, thank you. You're generous and courageous to join us. I can't thank you enough. C, please do feel like if you want to join us anytime, would love to have you. I'm going to go ahead and put you on our email list. You could unsubscribe if you're sick of hearing me, but I'd love to have you anytime you want to drop in so you get our latest, events. Would love to say hello to you and have you join our community here. We'll be back here next week, March 1st, celebrating the birthday of the Navy Seabees. Yay, look at Donald. There's one person in this whole meeting who's cheering. Don Wolf. So we are going to be celebrating Navy Seabee because the Seabee birthday is March 5th. So we're going to have the program March 1st. We're going to be talking about the Seabees. And also Greg Yost has very generously offered to talk a little bit about the end of Desert Storm. Because as a historian, I know, and everybody should know, how to end a war is much more important than beginning one. Ending a war is really tough. Usually you're keeping a door open to another war. That's usually what happens. And certainly that's what happened with Desert Storm. So we're going to talk about the end of the Desert Storm War, how it came to an end, the loose ends that weren't tied up. So let's talk about that next week. But tomorrow night, I hope you'll join us for Bud Anderson, the P-51 pilot, the Triple Ace, the test pilot. I look forward to this, and I look forward to seeing you all again. All right. Take care. Good night, everybody. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Night. Thank you.
Thank you.